Okay, our recording has begun. We do have a quorum, so we'll go ahead and get started with our work session. We do. So we'll start as usual with board and commission interviews. And today we have with us Robert Wagnon, who is interviewing for the Traffic Advisory Commission. And that commission is structured so it has an alternate member vacancy that is sometimes active. So Robert, come on up to the microphone and we'll ask you to please speak into the microphone since it's going to be recorded. Just tell us a little bit about why you'd like to be on the commission and what you think you might bring to it.
Okay, so I'm Robert Wagnon. I own a business in Richmond Heights, computer services. I am a member of Rotary, a Webster citizen, and I really just want to help my community in any way possible. I saw in the newspaper that there was an opening for traffic advisory. I thought I could do that job suitably well. Can I answer any questions about that?
Any questions? I'm gonna just, that was so fast. We got to keep you here a few more seconds.
So you have no formal experience with
Microphone.
planning or, do you have experience with planning or city, any sort of infrastructure type?
No, I do not have any background in infrastructure. If I'm not the most suitable candidate, I accept that idea and, would defer to someone with more experience. But if the position needs to be filled, I would like to ably fill it.
Great. There's nothing wrong with learning, so it's a good thing.
And I was just gonna ask, one of the focus is on walkability and bikeability of that commission right now and a complete streets kind of model. Is that something you're interested in finding more of? You may know some.
Yeah.
Your thoughts.
When I looked at the position, I assumed that there could be a variety of needs. It
Yeah.
could be safety. It could be
Mhm.
livability.
Yeah.
I assume there could be some compromises that need to be made for various constituents.
Mhm.
Hoping to fairly arbitrate those sorts of decisions is sort of what I was looking at.
Okay, great. Are there other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to spend your evening another way tonight.
Thank you.
All right.
Good night.
Good night. All right, we'll come back to the appointments that we need to make at the end of the work session. So we are ready for issues and updates. Who wants to start tonight? City manager. How about if we start with the city manager for a change?
Tag, I'm it. I only have one update. Destination WG, just to encourage everybody to fill out the survey, give us their thoughts, feedback. It's a great survey, lots of interaction and open fields. It launched on Friday and we have under 30 responses. So we would really like for people to fill it out, have their kids fill it out, anybody. So that's it, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you. City attorney? Sir?
I have no updates, Mayor.
Katie, city clerk?
No updates.
All right, then we'll come back over here to you.
Just for fun, I have a architectural review board update because I never get to make those. Mara's making a really neat improvement and they're going to start using reusable bags and packaging to distribute their materials. They go through a lot of paper and lots of drawings, lots of words, lots of things that they have to get delivered to them. So they're going to start using some reusable products instead of what they've been using, which is disposable. So I thought that was kind of a nice way for the ARB to be involved in some of the other initiatives. So
That's great.
that's it.
Councilmember Smith, and please use your microphone.
Thank you very much.
Like that.
Mr. Peterson is sitting in the audience, our usual reminder to use our microphone. So I'm trying to take up some of the slack here.
No, the only updates I have is both the commissions and so Webster and they're getting ready for Christmas, they're getting ready for the holidays. I think next month they're going to be nailing down what's going to be happening and what to expect. So we'll give you some definite details then.
Okay,
But
great.
otherwise, I have nothing else to report.
Yes.
I was going to
Councilmember
note that
Lewis.
Sarah is talking about the ARB switching to other materials, and that would be a tactic that we could check off the list from that department. So that's good. And I mean a tactic from our strategic plan. So anyway, this morning, yesterday, the Sustainability Commission met and First thing of note is Thursday, we have our Eco Ed series at Webster University. The subject is going to be plastic waste. And Jennifer Went, who is the specialist in that area, she's with the Missouri River Cities and Towns Initiative, which is kind of a new organization that is starting to become involved here, or that we are learning about. So that's at 7 o'clock on Thursday. Then this is the last meeting before Halloween, and so the final Saturday will be the Pumpkin Smash. That's November 4th and 5th.
So much fun.
Which will be this year at the Service Center on Waymeyer. So from 8 to noon, you may stop by and bring your pumpkins to be smashed by commission members or any other person that would like to toss their pumpkin into the dumpster.
That was both, the 4th and the 5th, November 4th and 5th.
It's the 4th
The 4th,
from 8 to noon.
4th and 8th. Okay.
Yes, technically the dumpsters will be there over the weekend, but that is the event. 8
Alright.
to noon on Saturday. And then also just kind of recalling our recent resolution for solar rebates. Grow Solar is an organization within the Missouri Botanical Garden, and they will be having tomorrow their last citywide in-person introduction to solar power. It's going to be at Bar K from 5 to 6 tomorrow, which is on McCree, in McCreetown. And then there are 2 more virtual sessions that you must sign up for via the website for Mobot. And that's on the 2nd and 8th of November. And then by that time, if you want to apply to the Grow Solar program, which basically will lower costs by doing a group buy of solar equipment, that application is due on the 17th of November.
Okay,
And that's all I have.
thank you.
We had Historic Preservation Commission met last week and had the public hearing for a home on Marvin Court for local historic designation. That'll be coming to the full council next meeting. So that's a really compelling story, and I think that the council will be interested to hear that. There's also just the regular work of the commission in approving demolition requests. We've had quite a few lately, but there is one that we're trying to get some more information to see if there's historic significance. And so just to kind of put that out there, it's 12 North Euclid, and it's on the Webster Walk, and it's thought to be one of the oldest homes in North Webster. And the commission members are looking for information about like who lived there and significance of that. There's some different connections there. So if anybody has any information, they're welcome to reach out to the commission chair or to the staff liaison Mara about that.
What was that address again?
It's 12 North Euclid. It's a little L-shaped stone building next to a church.
Next to a church.
I can send you.
Oh.
I
yes.
can send you more
No,
information too on it.
I
Emerson.
know where it is.
You got it now?
Yeah.
So did you say that's a demolition?
It's a
review?
demolition request,
Mhm.
and they deferred it while they look for historic significance.
Who, do you know who requested demolition?
The property owner, which I believe that's a Onder property,
So on about the church.
not the church, the stone home next to the church.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
That's all from me. Oh, and I was in October a little bit last weekend in Old Webster, and it's just great. Like the band was playing, and we got stuff at La Macaron, and it was really lovely afternoon.
Great, thank you. I think that just leaves me. I do have a few things. I did go to the Wyman Open House. They were grateful for our recognition of both students and administrators out at Wyman. It's such a fun place and it's so close. I delivered a 25th anniversary proclamation to the Shepherd Center, which on Friday will celebrate with a luncheon their 25th year of providing services to seniors in Webster and Kirkwood and surrounding areas. Was it Metro Mayor's? Not much to report there. Did a tour of Hickson today with 3 lovely 8th graders who took me around. I highly recommend, if you're thinking, you know, I'm not quite sure about the future of the world, go take a tour with 3 very wonderful students. And so saw some of what they're working on in terms of science and sustainability, as well as one classroom where everybody really liked math. So that's a good thing. And then we had last week, Neil and Marie and I worked with boards and commission chairs in kind of a training session to do some things about our new process for board and commission requests. Neil did a lot of work in thinking about and reviewing what our sunshine requirements are. And then we talked about a table of contents for a handbook for board and commission members that frankly I've been working on since we did our board and commission review, and that's been a while ago now. But I think that went well. I think that'll turn into an annual event so that as we have new chairs and vice chairs, that they understand their responsibilities a little bit better and have an opportunity to ask questions, because there was some really good discussion. All right. Again, I'll pause because somebody may have remembered something and give Councilmember Alexander a moment, not put her totally on the spot here, but just only sort of on the spot. We're just doing our issues and update. Look at that. She jumps right in. Okay. Well, then we can move on. And we have with us today Ron Klipp, owner of the Hub Bicycle Company, also the chair of the Old Webster Business District, which really a more special. I left out the special. I knew I was leaving out something. Well, thank you for being patient with us and keeping on a schedule, since I didn't realize it was March when it was originally scheduled.
I'm good. It's all
right.
No
So-
problem. Yeah, you did not hurt my feelings one bit.
Well, we're happy to have you here now.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Again, my name is Ron Klipp. I'm from the Old Webster Special Business District Advisory Commission. I've been doing it for quite some time. This is my first time of doing this. So if I step out of line, you guys are telling me what to do and I'm doing it wrong.
We'll put you right back in line. We
Right.
promise.
So slide. 2 slides.
Well,
Technical
before you do
difficulty.
your presentation, I've
Yeah.
asked, oh, never mind, saved by the bell.
And then slide, please. So our what we do is we provide infrastructure and marketing support to the business district. This is funded through property taxes and business licenses. The amount that it's funded is approximately around $90,000. Most of it coming almost 50-50, 42 in real estate taxes and about $46,000 in business licenses. We also have a couple $1,000s we get every year from our fund balance that we have. We're basically a pretty conservative group, I believe, although this year we did go slightly over budget in our to use some of our fund balance. But when we've done this in the past, we have been very conservative and still dialed back. For instance, Jazz Festival reportedly will not need the $5,000 that we funded them because they did, when they have to ask for the funds, it's way in advance, and when it comes time, they found a way to get the funds. So, slide, please. So on the infrastructure improvements, what we do, we provide employee parking lots to leave the streets open for our customers. No, wrong day. All right. For customer parking, we do a rooftop lighting program, which you guys may be aware of, to see lights on top of the roofs. That project has gone a little bit slower than we would like it to go because of electrical companies and everybody else in this world not being able to find the help that they need. And so it's been a little bit of a struggle, but we keep pushing forward on that. The floral and tree planting that we provide around the business with the pots and the trees. That is our main expense. That is provided by Parks Department. And that is where we spend the majority of our money. About 40% of our budget comes from there. The beautification signage, which you see there, we have 4 different banners displayed that go up periodically throughout the year, which help from Public Works, helps put them up for us, of course. Holiday decorations, which are right around the corner, coming up here in November. And we also provide pedestrian benches as well as trash cans. And we also do a district-wide recycling program as well, with a receptacle that is next to by the parking deck behind, I guess it's Gore there. Yeah. As far as the slide, please. As far as the economic and marketing support, we provide funds to Jazz Festival, which I just mentioned earlier, which is hopefully not as much as we needed to. We also support Old Webster Trade Association, along with the Holiday Open House, which is coming up, street dance, Walktoberfest, which we just had this last weekend. It could have been a little warmer. I was out there for quite a while and it was cold. It's kind of a hit and miss with weather, of course. Then we also do a holiday ad campaign as well, which is coming up around Christmas. And we also minimally support Paint Webster too. So that is it in a nutshell. I can answer any questions you guys may have at all.
Are there questions?
Emerson, you had like how 10, 5?
That's all. I'll let you slide this time.
I'm curious, we had a location, you all closed the parking lot, Lockwood entrance for the first time, and just curious how that worked.
So I walked down there at one point in the day. I will say our turnout, if it was a nice sunny and not cold, spitting, rainy day, it wasn't really rainy, but it was misting. It would have been better attended there.
Okay.
How they were set up, it looked fantastic.
Okay.
And so I think that if we can continue that moving forward, then that would be awesome. We used to have, for you who do not know, we used to have a space over next to McConney and Burr, which was just basically a concrete pad is all it was. I mean, it was kind of an eyesore. There was a grant that was applied for and funded by MSD to make a nice planting there, which personally I like. But some of our board members were distraught that they wouldn't have a place to put on events like we are doing here. But hopefully when we have our meeting next Tuesday, we'll be able to get together and say, hey, how did that work out? For the minimal amount of time that we do use that space, I think it worked out just great.
As a participant, I parked in that lot and it was easy. I had no problem getting to the lot, off of Allen.
Right.
And then we walked through and walked by the pretty garden by where the band was set up. So
Okay, great.
from a participant point of view, it worked really well.
I'm
Okay,
super glad to
good.
hear that. It's if you look at Jazz Festival, which is massive. I mean, I have people parking. I live on Gray and Jackson, which is people are parking there. 4th of July, people walk forever. I mean, if your event is good, people will find a place. And I didn't notice any places that were hurting for parking. And our employee lot behind us, I believe it says Monday and through Friday. But people can park there too. And that we didn't notice anything that was overly full at all. So.
All right, great. Any other questions for Ron? Thank you for coming this
My pleasure,
evening and
guys. Thank you.
giving a report.
Pardon me?
Good to see, and giving your report. It was good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you guys as well. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we will move on to our FY 2024 quarterly fiscal update and soft close review for FY 2023 with Assistant City Manager and Director of Finance, Mr. Eric Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any words I can get out in a row.
That's the longest title in government. I always like to joke. So thank you, Shella, for pulling up the PowerPoint as we go through it. I do want to just highlight, we'll get to reusable materials, Councilmember Bliss, for the financial reports as well, but there's a lot of paper that's provided to you, and we'll be working on a new way to dashboard that and show it off. So for all those at home, webstergrovesmo.gov/budget will have all these documents as soon as we're done here. So you'll be able to see everything we're talking about, the presentation, and the quarterly reports and the performance reports as well. This is our soft close report, which again means these are the numbers that we have sent to the auditors for the annual audit for fiscal year 23. So the only change that you'll see to these numbers are ones that the auditors direct us to make following their review of the books. And then there's a Q1 fiscal report for this current fiscal year, fiscal 24. We'll give you our quarterly investment report and also do budget amendments for future consideration, some conversation with you about some of the important things that we believe from a leadership perspective we should be talking about. So moving on, and I will get my mouse in the right spot. So let's start with last year, fiscal year 23. I'm going to be moving my face around a little bit tonight, but so our overall final numbers, we budgeted all funds a $1.4 million deficit, and that turned into a $1.4 million surplus. I want to be very clear for everyone at home. There's a difference between a structural deficit, which we've talked about a long time about recurring expenses and revenue not lining up. This is a 1-year spot and point of view. So that statement doesn't solve the structural deficit. It improves it, but it does not solve it. Okay. So I just want to be clear of that. So ultimately our revenue was 109% of what we budgeted, and our expenses came in at 94% of what we budgeted. So we took that $1.4 million deficit, turned it into a $1.4 million surplus.
And while I want to say thank you to all our department heads and staff, because that's an amazing thing to have accomplished over the course of the year, it is important to note, I think, that we have one-time legal settlements in here that inflate that 1.4. If you're looking at it, it feels like more money than we actually really have.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so there is about $940,000 worth of one-time legal settlements, and then about another 60 some of insurance settlements for various property and casualty issues. So there's $1 million all told. That's 1 million. So again, that's that one-time pot of money that makes things look good, but it doesn't solve that recurring issue, the structural issue. And you really see that in the general fund because this number is greater than what I told you even when we reviewed this back in July, looking at the end of this year. Our expenditures, first of all, great job to the entire organization, 99% of budget. That's a great variance. That means we are putting our expense measures about where we're going to be, and we're holding that line, you know, and really any amendment to that number, of course, the bottom line number of the general fund has to come to you all for approval. So that's a really good showing. Why I want to talk about budget amendments later is you look at that revenue amount and we're at 114%. That's $2.5 million over what we estimated. And I will get into some of the reasons for that. But again, primary reason number one is those one-time funds. That's $1 million right there. And there is not in the remaining 1.5, one thing that gets you that big amount of money. It's not like property taxes came in so big. It is a scattering across many different revenue lines that outperformed estimates. Some of that is related, I believe, to inflation. Obviously, prices are gone up, so sales tax revenues are going to come with it. You look at gas receipts, we'll show you that. Natural gas gross receipts tax. Spire got a rate increase that they got passed through the state, so therefore there is now 7% is on more money on the bill, so 7% is a higher amount. So we'll talk about the variances and again, some of those budget amendments coming up, but it's really important to note that this line again does not solve that structural issue. It's really inflated by a $1 million one-time number. So that should be fiscal year 24. Sorry about that. But right now for the first quarter of this year, all funds, we are at 17% of revenue, 23% of expenditure. The Q1 report, people always ask me, why is revenue so low? And that's because, first of all, you only have 2 months of the big sales tax, not 3 months of the way the reporting comes through from the county in this data. We will get all 12 months. It's just, it comes late in the process. If anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer that. But also property taxes, of course, are going out to be collected in November. So it's really, you're going to see the major tax lines come in over the course of Q2 and Q3. In the general fund, we are at 21% of revenue to date. So at $4 million in revenue. Now I want to point out $4 million in revenue, and you look at where we were in 23 at 2.8. So we're exceeding where we were at this day last year in revenue collections. And we are under in expenditures where we were at this point last year in our expenditure side at 30% of expenditures. So that is, a good news for us. Again, this is the first quarter. This is too early to say we have, delivered the budget as we expected, but it's a good trend to be in. Want to walk through some revenue spotlights for you all. This is the pooled sales tax. The pooled sales tax that is before you. We are at 107% of budget in 23. So again, we set a budget, sales tax came in 7% higher. When you look at that in that amount, let me grab this out of the way here. And let's grab that. I mean, we're talking about amended and actual 3.7 to 4.2. So that's $500,000 more in sales tax. I know the percentages can be a little problematic. We're already 19% of the budget year to date. So we have 2 months of collections so far in that amount. So that is, one of the lagging reporting periods. But the pooled sales tax looks to be in great shape still. Of course, inflation may change that. Falling consumer demand comes in, or if we feel recessionary pressure. So this is one that we keep watching because this is our big driver of economic activity, and tells us that.
Eric, is this
Yep.
one that we were kind of conservative about because we didn't know what kind of numbers were going to come in?
That was the use tax.
Use tax.
Which I will get to. So the next one I want to draw attention to is the fire sales tax, not because there's anything important about the fire sales tax, except it is our only true point of sales tax in Webster Groves. Doesn't have anyone else skimming anything off the top in the pool and the shared and everything. This is collections that happen in the city of Webster Groves at Mr. Clip's cash register and at Schnucks and such. This tells us our economic activity in the city. Okay, so this is a 1/4 cent point of sale tax. We were just under budget by 99% last year, so very close to what we estimated. We're at 26% this year already. So this is one that shows us how are we doing here, and we can benchmark the pool against it. Is the pool still advantageous to us? Gives us that kind of benchmarking point. The local use tax, Councilmember Smith, this one obviously started in October after folks passed Prop U in 2022. So it started October of 22. We budgeted $250,000 in that first year, thinking we'd have, half a year of collections. As you can see, we blew that number out of the water, 191% of budget. Now, no one had a good estimate for that. So, that's gonna, again, that extra, $120,000, more than that, $220,000 is going to inflate the revenue numbers, right? But we're already at 48% of budget year to date. And again, these are residents of Webster Groves. This is not some other folks in the county adding into this. This is only our residents and the strength of their online sales to out-of-state companies. This isn't buying from folks in Missouri. So this is a revenue stream that I think is probably, if it sticks along this trend, we haven't even gotten to the Christmas shopping, going to really exceed our estimates. So we'll get better baseline data, but again, it does point out that we have some really good performance in some of these revenue streams, which is good news for the city. Business licenses in 23, we are 103% of budget. We only have 4% of budget, but we put this slide in here because this is an important line to watch. They are all charged in April. The renewals go out in April. So this is going to be a late arriving revenue stream in the fiscal year. Municipal court fines, certainly we've seen a downward trend pre-COVID even, really since the Ferguson issues, and rightfully so, of municipal court fines. We were at 93% of budget last year. Already this year, though, 40% of the budget year to date. Our new team in courts, not to diminish our old team in courts, but our new team in courts has really kicked it in with a lot of the remaining files that go back even pre-COVID that needed to be cleaned up in courts and brought in for final adjudication. So we're seeing an influx there. Now, I'm not going to set a benchmark against that because a lot of that's, one time just a backlog moving through, but it certainly does help in this year to move courts forward. So at 40% of budget already. And I should say that team, when I mentioned that, is courts and the prosecutor's office and the way they are processing cases throughout the system. These are our utility gross receipts, water. So this is the tax, 7% utility tax on water receipts, 92% of budget last year, 35% year to date already on the water bills. Gonna grab this and try to find a good spot for it. But you can see, we have seen remarkably, even though the utility taxes have not restored themselves to really pre-COVID numbers in a way, we've seen growth happening in a couple of them. So that is good news, and that we're bouncing back in some of those usages. Gas gross receipts, this is natural gas. Again, you'll see a pretty level mark there across the way. But in 23, we're 121% of budget. Why did that happen? Middle of 2023 fiscal year, Spire got their natural gas increase. So of course you have a rate increase, was not planned in our budget estimate. It's going to change the amount of collections. This year, of course, we're at 8% of budget, but it's not the heating season yet. So, it's really probably most folks, using that in commercial commercial uses.
And it doesn't, Eric, it doesn't look like that Spire increase was accounted for in our projections, really.
It came post-budget adoption. So we. didn't
Oh,
amend the
right.
budget.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
and that's, again, one of the things we want to talk about when we talk about budget amendments. So we created the budget estimates based on the past trends, as you can see.
Yeah,
Pretty,
absolutely.
not much deviation, but an outside force, i.e. a rate increase
Right.
came along and changes that calculation. On the telephone gross receipts, this is one where we see the impetus of cell phones coming in, less people having landlines and such, including commercial apparatus. You can see our budget in 2020 was well over, I think, was over $600,000, and we have been in decline on telephone gross receipts since then. 93% of budget. We did bounce back some last year, and we're at 17% of budget to date. And then electric gross receipts. Again, one that dipped through COVID and then now is coming back up on a trend line, 94% of budget last year and 14% of budget year to date, but still not meeting budget. And this is the story of the gross receipts. The trends that we sort of built in the past, we are not meeting them. And in general, we're seeing a lessening of utility usage in most overall categories, not meeting the budget estimates that we've created in the past. Sorry, that I want it. Cable franchise fees. These are the fees on Spectrum, Charter, AT&T and such to deliver cable TV, and video service providers is the new term. This is falling. I expect that this will continue to fall. 72% of budget last year, 10% year to date. It sounds like we are maybe mandated to lower our utility tax on these folks by some state laws. So it's the effects of preemption, which Missouri is not immune to. It's an issue happening to almost every city government across the United States. Obviously, not to be partisan, but in mostly conservative states, you're seeing preemption hit. And the industry, the cable industry, certainly has many friends in Jeff City that have worked long and hard to try to get out of paying the fees. For those watching and others, this comes because we own the right of way. So we are allowing them to put cable in the right of way that is a public right of way. And essentially the legislation, the attempted legislation and the goal is to say they get it for free, right? So none of our residents get to put their water lines in the right of way for free and such, but it's a private use of the public space essentially. So that's the ultimate goal. I think it's, as we talk about government affairs, something that we will continue to be looking at because it is, while not an extravagant amount of money, certainly does affect our general fund.
And just so council members are aware, anyone who might go to Jeff City this legislative session, this is one of the priority pieces of legislation for the St. Louis Municipal League, is to make sure that we can collect video service fees from all sorts of different providers.
Go the right way here on the presentation. Expenditure spotlights for last year and this quarter. So we always talk about our utilities and what we've used. Electricity certainly is one that we are using. The reason that you don't see a full 5-year trend is prior to 2022, this was separated into the departments. So it was all within a department budget. But the trend, obviously, as you can see, since really post-COVID through 22, is that our budget estimates, while we keep moving them up, still aren't meeting our usage of electricity. So this speaks to our involvement in the solar plans and those capital plans. How can we lower our spend in electricity, maybe sell some back into the grid as well? But we were 107% of budget last year, 35% of budget year to date already, coming into this cycle, which we'd want to see 28 to 29% of budget. So things we'll be watching as we look forward in the next quarter, especially with the heating season coming up on us. Fiscal year 23, this for natural gas, this is our gas bill. Again, 136% of budget. We are also a rate payer, so that rate increase caught us in the expense side as well. And that increased our spend there. And then also 16% of budget year to date. But again, we're not in the heating season. So, it's really our commercial more use of that that's causing the expenditure right now. We always talk about overtime. So this is general fund across the organization. In 23, I want to point out we are 111% of the budget overall, not one department, just all the overtime budget across all the departments, pool it all together. We were 111% of the budget. So that's about $50,000. The programs that were over budget, greater than $500. So anything under 500, we considered immaterial to their overage. Fire at about 7,000, police at 48,000, municipal court at 10, public affairs at 800. That includes the front desk with public affairs, and the ice arena at 1,800. I just want to point out police, that number will not include their overtime grants that come in and replenish. That's on the revenue side. So there is some reimbursement for that, but that is their true over number of budget. On municipal court for both years, I do want to point out that we've authorized extra overtime to get through that backlog of cases that are there, but we will be, as we look forward to this year, limiting that now as they're getting more caught up so that we can pull back into regular hours and usage. For fiscal year 24 to date, 39% of the budget. Again, we've been through 7 pay periods so far out of 26. We'd like to be somewhere in that 30% range. So we are obviously trending overall in the budget a little higher. Again, police already 65% of their budget year to date. Big slug right at July 4th. I mean, we start the budget with a large amount. The police chief and I talked though, we will have some reimbursements, but the number is going to be over budget as we move through the fiscal year. Fire right now is at 29% of budget year to date. I want to be very clear as you look at your line item for this year and going forward, their overtime is split now to better track their unscheduled overtime, which we call the staffing overtime, and they need to have a certain number of people on staff. And then their training or special events overtime. If they need to call people in Jazz Fest to sit on the ambulance, the reserve ambulance and such, those types of apparatus. Municipal courts at 122%. Again, same thing, working through that backlog with the new judge, getting through those cases and the new prosecutor. And so we've seen a couple of court nights ago, I staffed. I think we had a case docket of well over 300 cases. This room was entirely full, lines wrapping downstairs and such. So, we are working through those cases and such and moving that on. So,
Eric,
yes.
sorry to put you on the spot. You mentioned 4th of July. What would your estimate be for our overtime costs for community days?
4th of July overtime. We are actually very lucky because July 1st happened on a Saturday. And of course, July 4th came on was it Tuesday, I think this year. So that was the beginning of a pay period. So we were able to really see, what those in the fiscal year, what it was. And our overtime in that pay period was $23,000. But that's not the regular salary. That's calling in the officers needed to provide for the parade, to work the Lions Carnival and such. And historically, we have not, there is some overtime that the Lions pay, but then also, we as a community pick up overtime as well to help with that coverage.
Thank you.
Gasoline and oil across the entire organization. This speaks to our driving, our fleet. We're 141% of budget last year. If you look at revenue, it's not a trend, but I wanted to point out, if you look at revenue in 23, the gasoline tax, which is item 410, was $210,000 over budget. So the increase in gas price, the gas tax that we get certainly kicked in there. And that may be a one-time thing. It may be a new trend that we have to look at, but it also cost us. We are $57,000 over in those line items. So for fleet use, the programs that were over budget, you can see there again, over $1,000, fire over by 10, 23 in the police department, street maintenance at 15,000, sewer lateral at 1581, park maintenance 1,000, and park improvement 4,400. So across some different funds, but again, gasoline and oil costs certainly do affect the organization. We have $181,000 budget this year. Sorry, I think I forgot to take out one line there. We're at 27% of the budget year to date. So
That's an interesting number, the
Exactly, right?
199.919.
Yeah. think my fingers got going faster than my brain on that one. So that line shouldn't be there. It's $181,000 budget overall. We're at 27%. So we're in line with where we want to be. But again, we have not experienced yet going out and plowing all the fleet going out to all the parking lots and the sidewalks that we
Right.
address. So. Are we good on revenues and then expenditures?
Yeah.
Can I ask one?
Yes, absolutely.
On the use tax, you
Yes.
said that was for expenses out of state?
That's
Do we
correct.
not-
So-
we don't pay use tax on
No, so you
state?
pay sales tax. So, Ron Hub, if you buy online from Ron Clip at the Hub, buy a bike online, that's going to be the regular sales tax, which is the same rate. The use tax is applied to out-of-state retailers for online purchases. So that is, we can tell, and actually we can't release the names, but we can see the companies that are reporting those use taxes to us. That list has grown as companies come into compliance, but we can see where our folks are ordering from. We also can see boats, folks that order a boat to go sit on the lake from an out-of-state company, because they live here, we benefit from that use tax. It's a residentially based use tax. So it doesn't mean the use of the item has to be here, but the location of the resident. So great news again in our schedule of investments. I really want to applaud our team. Our total investments are at 22.9 total investments in cash. And the total investments are at 12.1 million. That the overall number is down a little bit because we obviously put that big contribution into the pension and we defeased using the debt service reserve. So we've lost a little bit of the chunk of principal to invest, but our weighted yield and our yield spread has continued to rise. So we've gone up 0.15% in our weighted yield to 4.78. That is now, that's a really growing number. And in fact, as you see in the MOSIP here, excuse me, that should have been changed. I don't know how that got to be 4. It should be 5.49. Apologize there. On the PowerPoint, we'll change that, but it's 5.49 and 5.68. MOSIP is really providing those returns. So we are exceeding even where the market is today in our weighted yield. And then our yield spread is spread across the way there. We still have one investment, as you can see, still in the 0.05%, an old fund investment at Simmons Bank that will be, when it matures, brought over into these higher yields. We do expect, and we're right on pace with our interest income, but again, for those that are interested, our interest income should come in, if I can find it here on the line, we're expecting about $535,000 of interest income. Compared to past years, we're $9,000.
Oh, wow.
The purpose of this conversation about budget amendments is we've talked about these variances and these issues. We have done budget amendments about expenses. We're going to run out of money. We need to put money in for a new expense. If we're going to have to make some emergency repairs, we ask you to amend the budget. Historically and culturally here at Webster Groves, we haven't done much with revenue estimates and changing those throughout the year. We don't have to, but it ends up then at the end of the year that it looks like we really under budgeted, right? And come out really, really good. And it's not because we try to do that. We've always been a bit conservative with our estimations, but our estimations are just simply not in line with the data that we get farther and farther throughout the year and the actual collections. So from leadership's perspective, if we're going to do some budget amendments, we had 3 goals to really identify. Let's reduce that variance at the end. Let's get budget to actual to line up closer, which means you all and we all are involved in active monitoring of those trends and where we are at. Get the budget estimates to line up with the realities. Big one I'll explain in the next one, property taxes. We set those property tax estimates in March. We don't have the values and the rates set till September. Right? But we've never changed them between those two periods. And then how do we take those trends and really talk about shorter time between the milestones? We look at a trend across the fiscal years, which is certainly true. Can we drill sales tax data down to say, we're seeing the holiday spend really exceed by 40%. What's that going to do to our revenue that we can then build in so we can reduce that variance going forward? So again, we do that active monitoring, but we never bring it to you to say, let's change the budget so that a budget really reflects more accurately what we're expecting throughout the year. So again, property tax is a great place to start because we did all the estimations for property taxes in March. We didn't have any assessed value data. Even the preliminary numbers weren't out. We set the tax rates in September. That's 3 months after the budget year started. And we think that we can now put the budget amendments in place in Q2 to line up that revenue we should expect with what we are actually going to be able to bill, in the property taxes, what we hope to collect. So that is our first recommendation to you, is that we didn't want to just bring them to this meeting, but at the next meeting, present a series of budget amendments, probably one resolution, but you'll be able to see them all to really change the property tax numbers to better reflect. I'll just use the general fund, that residential and commercial line, which is going to be in the general fund revenue. It's 401, the current real estate taxes. We budgeted 1.16 million. Our revenue with the increased assessments and where the rate's at should come in about 1.19. So that's $37,000 more. Personal property taxes is likely to come in about $33,000 more. Now, that seems like a small number, but again, the closer we can get our budget numbers to line up to our realities, the less the variance is at the end. So as you go through that chart, that's what you're seeing. I know people are going to say, how'd the pension fund lose money and how'd the debts fund lose money? Part of that is, first of all, again, if you're taking the trends based on March, you're never accounting for the realities in September, right? So the trend lines got built a little higher than we should have had, but also then the splits between each of the property taxes. The property tax comes to us as one check for commercial real estate taxes. So we then internally have to split that between the different 4 funds based on what should be their percentage of that. And so when you do that and change, obviously the debt service fund doesn't need as much taxes now in the levy because we've lowered that rate. So that's going to drastically pull that amount down that we're getting in the debt service fund. I know it seems very complicated, but essentially we charge people a tax for debt. That amount should go to the debt fund. We shouldn't over subsidize it or under subsidize it because we didn't change the ratio internally when we account for it. And that's really what you're going to see in those 2 lines. Obviously, so the 4 big funds, the general fund, street improvement fund, pension and debt service would change. And then there would be changes in the Crossroads, Old Orchard and Old Webster as well.
Anybody, so essentially what you're asking right now is whether we want to consider a number of revenue amendments to the
Yes.
budget.
Correct.
Council, would we like to consider a number of revenue amendments to the budget?
If we didn't make those revenue amendments, will we be able to recognize a increase in revenue, I guess?
You will be able to recognize an increase, yes. So regardless if you make the changes, all right, we should expect, I'll just use that 1.19 again number for the general fund, residential and commercial. We know that's 100% of everything we can bill minus about 2% to account for our collection rate, the people that will not pay their taxes. We get about 98% payment of taxes. So we know that we should get that, and we're going to get that if the collection rate holds true. So we're going to see the increase regardless. Really, the question is, do we change the budget document to say we know we should be getting about this amount of money so that it doesn't look like we're supposed to get this, but we end up getting all of this or double it, and such. I know it's hyperbole, but I think to make my point, you get it.
Makes sense to me.
Would you go back to your goal slide for
Sure.
a minute? Go ahead,
Oh,
Emerson.
yeah, it makes sense. I just, I think it makes sense of putting those numbers closer together based on what comes in. I'm good.
Anyone else? Comments?
I mean, the timing suggestion makes a lot of sense. I mean, why would you? So that I'm on board for that one.
So, my question is this. When we do expenditure amendments to the budget, we do that as costs come up.
Yep.
Is this talking about maybe once a year, we do the revenue realignment amendments, or how often are we talking about this?
So I really internally, property taxes would probably be about this time of year because we know better, right? And we can amend the budget to better reflect what we're going to get. I would guess that sales tax and those other much more consumer-based, consumer-driven type of fees and taxes would probably be once a year, but more than likely, as we're going into setting up the budget for the next year, right? To really get that budget estimate that we expect for this year, February, March, in line with what we think we're going to see, so that the trend can be affected, so that you, I, the citizens of this town can all see, okay, you know, we're expecting this much sales tax based on these kind of trends, and pulling that better in line. So one of the unfortunate things is we have to make a plan with only half year's data.
Right.
Right. And so the point is trying to put that transparency, and we expected this, and we said, well, we got to amend it to really try to match up with where we're at. So I think it's going to be probably twice a year, unless there's some major windfalls that we're need to account for in some way, which I don't think we'll get, but we always designate one time out so we can see it separately as it's.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is I see the point in doing this, and I understand why this would be good in terms of us understanding the trends. I also know that we are pushed for time in terms of our agenda, and I don't want to get in the habit of doing this
Right.
all the time and taking up more agenda time for something that we could do just, 2, maybe 3 times a year.
I foresee us, once we get in the rhythm of this, really in our communications to you saying, here's the new property tax numbers, here's what we should do an amendment on. Internally, one-on-one, if you have any issues with those numbers, and not having work session time all the time
Okay.
to go over that. We can certainly post that information so people can see our rationale, the same with the sales tax trend or such. But I don't think we need to do work session time twice a year, every year to do this. But we can also, if you want to, wrap it into the quarterly report update as well. If we, put an amendment after that. So if in this time is time we talk about it, we can do it that time.
And frankly, that's what makes sense to me.
Yeah. I
Yep.
agree, like, we're doing the quarterly reviews anyway, and then a budget
Yeah.
amendment to follow that. And it's quarterly and kind of on a regular basis.
And it's new, right?
Mhm.
So we want to make sure that we are fully transparent with how we're doing this and why we're doing this, as this presentation is. So thank you for that.
problem.
Are there other questions? Was that a nope or a yep?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Then we will move on to appointments to boards and commissions. Robert Wagnon applied for the Traffic Advisory alternate member vacancy. Would we like to appoint him?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. We need to formally appoint Barb Strang, who we agreed upon at our last meeting. Everyone still okay with that?
Yes.
John Sauter, who came to interview for the Business Development Commission. We remember there were 2 people who interviewed. We had someone else who was appointed. He has agreed to fill the vacancy on the Police Community Engagement Board for a business owner, which I think has been vacant for a while.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if we are amenable to that, yes, I
Yes.
see
Yeah,
nods
great.
of yes over there.
Yes.
Okay. And then last but not least, Laura Jordan has served 1 term on the Green Space Advisory Commission and wishes to be considered for reappointment. Green Space Advisory?
Yes.
All right, yeah, everyone good with that?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, well, then we will announce those at our regular meeting. And does anyone else have anything for the work session? No, we're gonna have a leisurely little break and we will reconvene for our regular meeting at 7:30.
Very good.
Yes.
All right, welcome to the regular meeting of the City Council of Webster Groves for October 17th. We are happy to have you with us. We welcome questions, ideas, and comments from persons in attendance. Please, if you are in attendance and would like to make a comment, fill out one of these comment cards. You will be called on by the chair of the meeting. If you're on Zoom, we will happily call on you if you use the raise your hand function. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and make sure you state your name and address when you come forward to speak. And you'll be able to do that at the remarks from the community and visitors portion of our agenda. We're going to start as usual with the roll call.
Yes, Mayor. Mayor Arnold,
Here.
Councilmember Bliss,
Here.
Councilmember Franklin is absent, Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Alexander.
Here.
Councilmember Richardson.
Here.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Here.
All right, we have a proclamation today, which I will read from here, and I believe some of Mrs. Rogers' family is in attendance here, so I'm looking forward to this and handing it off. I think some of you will remember that Mrs. Rogers was named in one of our earlier proclamations, but this one is for her individually. And it reads, whereas Doris A. Rogers was born and raised in North Webster Groves and lived a life devoted to community service. She was instrumental in starting the North Webster Community Improvement Association, a precursor to the North Webster Neighborhood Coalition. Doris was employed by the city of Webster Groves as a building inspector and consistently worked to obtain equal street maintenance for North Webster residents. She was instrumental in efforts that prevented eminent domain from converting the northernmost Webster border streets of Allison, Waymire, and North Elm from residential to commercial streets. And whereas when Riverside Park, affectionately known as the Bottoms, was razed and replaced by what is currently the Webster Groves Public Works Department, Doris's engagement helped to secure the development of Ivory Crockett Park. And whereas Doris was a member of the League of Women Voters and an advocate for health insurance for Black public works employees, Doris was an example of the countless individuals who lived a life committed to improving the lives of the Webster Groves community. And whereas the city of Webster Groves honors the life of Doris A. Rogers, who tirelessly educated current and future generations within and outside of Webster Groves community on social justice for all. Now, therefore, I, Laura Arnold, Mayor of the City of Webster Groves, and the entire City Council pay tribute to Doris Rogers and hereby proclaim the 29th day of October, 2023 as Doris Rogers Day in the City of Webster Groves. Why we're always frank. I just realized. All right. Item number 3 on our agenda, remarks from the community and visitors. I have one card for Mr. Dave Buck.
Dave Buck, 124 South Elm. Yeah, you ever had like a brain freeze? No, I am all for one for procedures, policies, and processes. But I want to share a story of something I think is much more important, has to do with personal character, kindness, empathy, and trust. This is a special activities permit. I fill out one of these every year since 2009 for Webster on Wheels, because we need the police department to sign off on our route, and we always have 2 police officers who help us out. 2 Sundays ago, on Sunday, October 1st, was Webster's 4th annual Porch Fest. I've never filled out one of these because this is not a city endorsed or funded event. We don't ask anything from the city, and we just put it on ourselves. It was all ready to go, but then on Friday morning, I get a call from Mike Albers, who happens to work for the Parks and Recreation Department. He lives on Central Avenue. He was hosting actually a music performer for Porch Fest. And he said, Dave, if we allow parking on both sides of Central, an emergency vehicle can't get through. And I go, holy crap, this is going to derail the entire event. So who did I call? Ghostbusters. I called Eric. And I said, Eric, this is the situation. I said, we've never had a special activities permit, but I'll fill one out or whatever. But, you know, with Webster on Wheels, this thing has to get routed for 2 or 3 weeks. And we're talking about 24 hours. And Eric looked at me and said, I'll take care of it. And then I said, well, Eric, I'll pay to have no parking signs put on the north side of Central and for the workers. And Eric said, it's been taken care of by an anonymous donor. And on Sunday morning, the no parking signs were up all along Central. Porch Fest went on without a hitch, and it was a great event, but it would not have happened without Eric's involvement. Now, we have procedures and policies. Eric broke the rules. He made an exception. He helped me. He helped me out. And I think, to me, like I said before, my mom was on city council in Wichita, Kansas, and she famously always said, communities move forward at the speed of trust. I trust Eric like I trust all of you. I really trust Eric. And I think he trusts me a little bit. But I think because of that trust, he moved forward and made it happen. So with that, I just have to make a little detour over here, Eric.
Right.
So you broke the
Excellent.
rules.
No.
Yes, on the record, no rules were broken.
Oh, yeah.
Eric, you have the right to remain silent.
All right. I see a number of staff members on Zoom. Is there any member of the public who would like to raise their hand and speak for public comments who is on Zoom? All right, then, we will move on to our next item, and that is. Oh, yes. Would you like to, you want me to share that with them? Councilmember Alexander wanted me to let you know in the Rogers family that you're welcome to stay for the entirety of our meeting, but it wouldn't hurt our feelings if you went ahead with your evening as well. Well, then please. I think maybe she knew that and that's why she's passing me notes. So. Oh, no, thank you all. It would not be rude at all. All right. Other than that, does anyone have new business? Okay, we will move on to our unfinished business. Councilmember Hickson Shepherd, could you call for the third reading of bill number 9235?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the third reading of bill number 9235.
Second.
And
Bill 9235, third and final reading. An ordinance granting a conditional use permit to Webster Groves Presbyterian Church to allow for shared spaces within an existing building for multiple tenants operating under educational facility, school for the arts use on approximately 1.67 acre tract of land in an existing structure at 45 West Lockwood Avenue in the D Commercial District and matters related thereto.
is there any discussion? Okay, let's have the vote, please.
Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander?
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd?
Yes.
Mayor Arnold?
Yes. Councilmember Alexander, could you call for the third reading of bill number 9236, please?
Yes, I would like to call for the third and final reading of bill number 9236.
Second.
Bill 9236, third and final reading. An ordinance permitting the subdivision of certain property at 617 Grant Court and 614 Grant Court in the A2 15,000 square foot residence district.
Is there discussion? All right, let's have the vote, please.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander? Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd?
Yes.
Mayor Arnold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
All right, we will move on to our new business, and that is the presentation of recommendations from the Charter Review Advisory Board. I want to start by reading a statement from Chair Jeannie Kirkton, who was unable to be with us this evening. So these are Ms. Kirkton's words. First of all, I'd like to thank my fellow CRAB members for their perseverance in the arduous and epic process of our year-long charter review. This being the first comprehensive charter review since 1965, I know that at more times than not, the process felt like combing through endless cobwebs. I extend deep thanks to Nicole Chaput for her service as vice chair and to Kyle Klump as secretary. My gratitude goes to Joe Dugan, who went above and beyond, chairing subcommittees, shepherding public engagement efforts, and getting our report into final form. To Mayor Arnold, Dr. Peoples, Eric Peterson, Neil Bruntrager, Jenny Starkey, Katie Nakazano, and staff members, thank you for your assistance and guidance along the way while always respecting our independence. To the council and the community, these CRAB members are your neighbors who hold diverse opinions and who care deeply about Webster Groves. They have studied and worked diligently and thoughtfully through numerous complex issues. We strove to give you recommended changes to our charter that lend flexibility to city operations, that help make it a living document adaptable to changing times, and to bring our charter into compliance with current law while maintaining the foundation of good government. We have compiled a plethora of data and information into a historical document that will hopefully be beneficial to the public, to you and your decision-making, and to future charter review advisory boards and councils. And last but not least, thank you for the opportunity to serve. It has been my honor. Sincerely, Jeannie Kirkton. Yay. And I do need to say for the record that Jeannie has been an exemplary chair. And I'll talk a little bit more about the general commission. I have joining us right now is Nicole Chaput, who is the vice chair of the Charter Review Advisory Board. And as just so council knows, Nicole's going to do some presentation here for us about the report. I'm going to talk just for a minute. We'll vote to accept the report, and then we'll talk about what happens next. So I will turn the floor to you if that's.
To jump in ahead of you.
No, you were right on time.
Okay.
We decided, they just didn't know yet.
So, well, great. Hi, everybody. I don't think I've seen you since my interview about a year ago, so thank you for this opportunity. And I have to echo Jeannie's comments. It's been a great experience for all of us. We were 11 strangers a year ago, and we came together as a group through numerous meetings, lots of time with Mayor Arnold, City Manager Peoples, City Attorney Bruntrager, and it was a really good experience. And as Jeannie mentioned, you know, we all did it because we care about the community. We want to know what people think. And we welcomed the opportunity to contribute to our community in this way. As Mayor Arnold mentioned, Joe Dugan is here as well as one of the primary draftspersons of our ballot votes and our reports. He's here to help answer any questions that you may have. He's probably more in the weeds on a lot of that stuff than I am. So no formality, feel free to jump in with a question. He'll jump up with any information that I might overlook as well. So as you know, Jeannie was here not too long ago and presented kind of an update as to where we were. So I'll just do a quick review of that and then dig into how the report is organized and some of the issues that got most of our attention. So as you recall, pursuant to the results of an election to review the terms of the charter at least every 8 years, you selected 9 CRAB members and 2 alternates to review the charter and make any desired recommendations. In August, and that was in October of last year when we started. In August of this year, we voted on 28 proposed changes and have since been working to finalize the report and add member comments on a number of the issues. The introduction to the report provides some very detailed context regarding our scope and methodology, summarizing our meeting schedule, our subcommittees, and all of the topics that we covered. Since we started meeting, in addition to 2 full committee CRAB member meetings every month, there have been subcommittee meetings, training sessions, and a number of public engagement events. And our report is very detailed and has a very thorough index, our thought being to create a historical document for the city to have for years to come, so that as other commissions are put together, they can look back and see what we did, why we did it, what we looked at, how we prioritize things, what the public thought way back in 2023, that might be helpful to future bodies. Our subcommittees looked at the use of wards for our elections, at council compensation and public engagement. We sought public input through a survey, a number of listening sessions, as well as a public open house. We reviewed proposals from city staff and council members. We received thorough and thoughtful advice from our city attorney. Minutes of all of the meetings are available. And as I mentioned, the appendix has detailed information from each of those events, summarizing public input, summarizing our thoughts, summarizing the survey. You can see the consultants that we had come in to give us training on a couple of important issues, to give you a sense of what we looked at, but also hoping that the community would also see how transparent we're being and how thorough we've been in our review. Page 8 of your document includes a guide to the recommendations. So for each recommendation, you'll see that we provided a statement of the issue, what our recommendation was, how each member voted and prioritized that issue as compared to other issues we had to deal with, and our findings. And then depending on the complexity of the topic, additional information or a table or some other resource is also provided. And for some topics where members felt so moved, additional member comments are included. And for historical purposes, we also included proposals that we originally considered but did not adopt. A table on page 46 summarizes our recommendations and ranks them by how we voted and how we prioritized them, providing a visual reference to the items that we felt were most in need of attention and to guide the council and public in its review of this long document. Some of our recommendations were simply to align the code with federal and state law, or with realistic timelines for when some information is received and when we can really expect things to get done. Some recommendations basically just modernize some outdated language and practices that are in the code. I'll do a quick review of the topics that led our list of priorities. Those also generated the most the most community input, and most of those got their own subcommittee as well. And those are summarized on the page on the deck on the slide that's up in front of you right now. So we started at the very beginning with the preamble to the charter. One of our most important resources was the model city charter that had some very thorough language on the preamble. And so we felt this was important in terms of thinking about what the city charter really is for us. You know, it's our constitution, it sets forth our values and goals and how we see ourselves as a community and how we want to present ourselves. So many members felt it was important to put some of our goals and values into the preamble right up in the beginning of the document that should guide everything that follows. One big topic was whether we should maintain our at-large system of elections, whether we should switch to wards, or whether we should have a bit of a hybrid situation where we have some people are elected through a ward system and some people are elected through at-large, with the mayor, of course, being at large. There was a lot of conversation about that, a lot of public input on it, but we ended up with a 5-4 vote in favor of a hybrid system. We also looked at council and mayor compensation. Our compensation is very dated. We haven't changed it since 1965, when I think you paid a babysitter $1/4 an hour. And now, teenagers get $15, $20 an hour. So we did a very comprehensive survey of similar local communities, including Kansas City, to see what their compensation rates were. And we made recommendations to increase the overall compensation, to acknowledge the work that all of you put into to this work, but also to make sure that we can always to get a broader range of people serving. We don't want there to be any boundaries to service. So if somebody has to give up a shift at work to to be in the council, or if they need to provide dependent care, we want to make sure we get those members of the communities, get their voices into the room as well. So that was a big topic, and everybody was in favor of that. We wanted to update some things about how we communicate. Like, we don't really have stacks of paperwork sitting out at the library or downstairs for people to come in and get a copy. So we looked at a more comprehensive and modern way to distribute and disseminate information about meetings and city information. One of the things we did, this did not really get a lot of community input, but just sort of streamlining the way we outline and set forth our administrative departments and boards and commissions. So putting some of that more on the council to do as an ordinance, rather than a lot of detail on what those are in the charter. And that was definitely a recommendation of, or definitely how things are in the model code that we thought made sense for our situation. Another big topic was petition signatures for recall and ballot initiatives. There was some conversation about whether, in calculating it, we should be looking at how many people voted in a particular election versus how many people were registered voters at any given time, whether it should be based on ballots cast or votes cast, and what the percentage of signatures you needed to overturn something, or to get an initiative going. So there was a lot of conversation, broad range of opinions on that, but we all agreed that at least some things should be changed, and we would suggest you to think very carefully about what the percentages are, so that we can balance, people having the opportunity to have their voices heard with making sure the barriers, the bar isn't too low, that we get a bunch of goofy stuff. And we also had a lot of conversation about the role of public engagement. So the model charter had a lot of language about including the public, at every step of the way. We are already doing that in many ways. This council is very proactive in that way, but it's not a formal part of the charter. And so we thought that was an important part of the type of community that we wanted to be. So we added some recommended language to make sure that that's in the charter, so that the council can always be guided by those thoughts. Joe, those are all my highlights. Am I missing anything major? Okay.
Would you come to the microphone just so the recording can hear you as well? Thanks, Joe.
I would just echo Nicole's comments, and maybe just to clarify a couple of points on this summary here, because Nicole and I were moving kind of quickly in light of Jeannie not being able to attend. So I think there may have been a couple of references to page numbers that were off because of the reformatting that was done in the last couple of days. The other thing I would just point out quickly are the petition signature item. What that is about is a recommendation from our body to move toward registered voter calculation, but to keep the percentages at a level that would be roughly equivalent to what the levels are under current law. So again, the registered voter aspect would provide a more stable basis rather than voter turnout every 2 years. So that's just a correction to that part there. I think that's the only significant thing I would just kind of point out in terms of the summary provided. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Is there anyone who had any questions on this? I mean, obviously, we're going to dig into the specific recommendations, but if not, I'll let you go ahead and preview the report for us.
I just did preview the report.
The structure of the report. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is what we just did. You're right. It's good to have your friends over there who can just like poke at you, keep you honest.
Yeah, I think we covered all of that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But if as Laura
Are
said,
there
if anybody has any
questions?
questions or.
No questions. Just want to thank you and the other committee members for I did sit in on a few meetings and, you know, you was really engaged and challenged each other and wasn't scared to, you know, to tackle a subject matter that might have been sensitive. So just want to thank all of you for doing that.
Thank you. I appreciate your saying that. We'll be sure to take that back to the rest of the group. Thank you.
I do have a question. I was just curious, how some comments got in there for their rationale in voting a certain way. Was that just an elective thing? I know Jeannie had some statements, Nicole and Joe did. There were others that just didn't really have statements, and I was just curious what the criteria was for putting those in the report.
What the chair decided in consultation with all of us as members was to give all the CRAB members the opportunity to submit additional comments if they wanted to. So it's purely just on the issues that individual members felt strongly and wanted to provide additional context.
I appreciate seeing those. Yeah.
Yeah, and this whole report is just so valuable, not only for the decisions that we have to make as a council and a community, but also, like you said, as a historical document. I mean, it's so professional, it's so thorough, it's so well organized. So just thank you.
Yes,
Can-
thank you.
Can I say the gift that they gave to Webster Groves of their time was truly remarkable? And Nicole, I'm going to embarrass you for just a moment. Not only did she serve on CRAB, but she was on the library board once upon a time, Planning and Zoning Commission once upon a time. These are, and Joe, his involvement in all of these things, these are people who are truly dedicated to the community in which they live. And the time that they spent, the community will never know, but the mayor knows, I know, Dr. Peoples knows, what they did and how hard they worked, literally word by word. So it truly is a wonderful report, but it's born of much hard work. So congratulations.
Great service to our community.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to read mine because I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget anything. So this report is the culmination of a lot of hard work, painstaking research, and lively debate. While each member was warned of the significant time commitment, I believe that these community members exceeded all expectations in both the level of detail of their review and the speed in which they are reporting to us. They did not do a cursory review of the charter. They dug in and as Neil said, they reviewed every single word and comma and period and whatever other punctuation was in the document itself. They weighed expert opinions, data from neighboring communities, a model charter, and did not shy away from expressing their opinions. The result is a very thorough and thoughtful report. I'm grateful to every member of the commission, and I'm going to name them so that we just have on the record today who we owe all this gratitude to. Jeannie Kirkton is chair, Nicole Chaput is vice chair, Kyle Klemp is secretary, Tammy Bain, Paul Dribbin, Joe Dugan, Jennifer Finney, Matthew Heil, Michael Yoakley, John Eppers, and Melissa Johnson, who all did just tremendous work. I also want to point out again, as Jeannie did, members of the city team, including Dr. Peoples and City Attorney Bruntriger, our City Clerk Katie Nakazano, Jenny Starkey, and Eric Peterson, who I know provided lots and lots of support. And I do want to say this to my colleagues on the council. I'd like for all of us to commit to taking the task of reviewing the board's recommendations as seriously as they took their task of formulating them. Let's each be sure to do our homework as well as they have and review the report carefully. And let's be as inquisitive and thoughtful as they have been in considering the interests of residents of Webster Groves. We owe that to them just as we owe it to the community. And again, you have my deep, deep thanks for all the work that you've done. And as you all know, we may be consulting you a little bit more along the process as we work our way through this, but it is a good time to say those thanks. And I think at the moment right now, unless there are more questions, I would entertain a motion for us to accept this report from the Charter Review Advisory Board.
Mayor, I move that we accept the report from the Charter Review Advisory Board, report to the City Council today, October 17th, 2023.
Second.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
All right. I think that concludes your part of the evening's festivities here. We're going to talk a little bit about what happens next and how we want to proceed as a council, but thank you both. You're welcome to stay. And as before, you're welcome. You put in a lot of hours, so you're welcome to go. Okay, before we talk about anything else, I'd like to give Neil the floor for a little while to help us understand, just review both for ourselves and for the public, the process of placing items on the ballot. You know, multiple ballots, can we do that? Status of the crab itself, and even deadlines, maybe that is the city clerk, but we know it's late January. So I will turn the floor to you, sir.
So at this point now, they have, the committee itself has completed its recommendations. They've now forwarded those recommendations to you. Now it is up to you as a council to decide which of those recommendations you would adopt. And it is you can adopt some of them, all of them, or none of them. You can adopt some now and say, we're going to take up more later. That can be part of your planning regarding when you might want to put this on the ballot, what you might want to put on the ballot. Once you have identified those things that you want to put on the ballot, we would then get into the business of actually writing what the ballot language would look like. And that would be in conjunction with the Board of Election Commissioners to make sure it meets the criteria that they have for what goes on a ballot and what doesn't. So again, we would construct that in such a way that would be most meaningful and most understandable to the members of the community as they're looking at these things so that they understand what they're voting upon. It will be a yes or no when it comes down to what the proposition would be. And that's actually one of the changes that are recommended by the Charter Commission here, because as it's written, we're not in compliance with state statute. And so it becomes an issue every time we have something that is a ballot initiative that we go to, that we prepare according to our charter, and then St. Louis County Board of Elections says we're not accepting that. So those sorts of things will have to go through that. But the conceptual aspect of this is something that you as a council will have to decide. And again, it can be done in a variety of different ways. There's no hard and fast formula for how you do it, and there's no hard and fast timeline for how you do it or when you do it. So you might decide that, you know, again, some things are priorities that you want to take care of right away. And one of the things that they did do, by the way, in their report is they made their recommendations regarding what is a priority and what is not. And it's based on one being the highest priority, and three being the least priority. So again, you will have the same decision-making as you go through this. So it is, it's a bit malleable. And again, we can make changes as we go along. But again, what you have to do is look at what you believe strongly are things that you need to attend to right away. And then you also have to think about when you want to make these things, or when you want to put these things on the ballot. So next steps are, again, negotiable. There are things that you all can consider in your own timeline, but you do have a hard and fast rule. If you want to get it on the April ballot, you would have to have it by the end of January. Okay.
All right, so let's begin those negotiations. I have worked pretty hard, and again, it's all changeable. And Dr. Peoples, to try and come up with some sort of schedule that we can work our way through this. And this schedule envisions that we will consider every single one of the proposals individually. That does not mean we have to send them forward to voters, but my personal opinion is that we owe it to the board to consider each one of those recommendations. In kind of thinking this through, there are a number of reasons to split this over several ballots. One is just the sheer number of things involved. Two is the time crunch that we have here before the deadline for the April ballot. And three is there are a couple of things on here that we're going to need to gather some more information. They're going to take significantly more time if we decide to move forward with them. So I'll draw your attention to the proposed timeline, and I'll give you've seen it or you have it, and I'll just tell you the philosophy. And again, even though this is written down here, it doesn't have to go this way. I was just giving us a place to jump off. But the idea is, to me at least, of the most important things we need to do and make sure we do is come in compliance with state and federal law and with county organization of elections. And so that's what the first part of this does. These seem November 7th and 21st almost seem like they're the little tiny smaller chunks, but these are the chunks that bring us in compliance with other governing authorities. And then it envisions that we would have some discussion, just a yes or no discussion about whether we would like to send forward some sort of hybrid system to the voters. Now, that doesn't mean we can put it on the January ballot because Charter Review Advisory Board did a whole bunch of work for us and a whole bunch of research to set the context for it, but there is no hybrid system defined to send to the voters yet. So we would have to put together a working group of council members, of CRAB members, of other people if we wanted to come up with that specific proposal. I don't want anyone working on a proposal that's that complicated and that long-term unless we are serious about sending something to voters. And that's why you have the broader abstract conversation first. We do have the opportunity also as council members to send forward individual items that we might like to put on the ballot. And so there's a time blocked in for that. I will tell you all, if you do have something, it's probably better that we see it sooner rather than later. One of the things I think that I certainly am considering sending or bringing up for us to review is the notion in the charter that we can't give right now, for example, a senior of any income stature a break in taxes. That would be against the charter because of the differential tax rate. That's still in our charter. So I think we need to, or any other group, we can't give any sort of differential tax rate. I am thinking about whether that's something I want to do. So if there are other things like that. In addition, it envisions us looking at the preamble and maybe sending preamble related language to the ballot this year. You'll see then also there's several of the kind of big ticket items are to be determined in 2024 after we've sent things to the ballot. And again, the rationale here is to some degree, I think, a lot of this will be discussed during the course of the election season, and I think that should inform our decision making. And we can hear also more from voters and spend more time on public outreach on these bigger issues if we are not stuck with a really tight time frame. So I'm going to stop talking because I've, talked way too much already in this meeting. Is there anyone who wants to talk about thinking about this entirely differently? As I said, I'm totally open to that. And we have to collectively make a decision.
I don't have any changes. Once I get a chance to kind of review it, who knows? But I do have a question for Neil. Are any of these items can be taken care of by a resolution?
No, I think any changes to the charter have to be done by vote. And again, if there are a couple places, there's one in particular where there's some wording that just clearly was what we call a scrivener's error. When they wrote it down, they wrote it wrong. But even then, I would tell you that you have to give enough credit to the authority of the charter that you can't make even those obvious corrections without going to a vote of the people. So the simple answer is no.
Some of the items that they're suggesting as far as priority, is the verbiage we have to put on the ballot long or is it short, in your opinion? I mean,
well, it's going to be, again, as you look through the recommendations, and you'll have a chance to see this when you go through it. When you look at the recommendations, the changes are relatively small. Substantively, they don't change the course of, there are some places where substances change. For instance, when we talk about classes for discrimination, we're adding classes that you cannot discriminate against, okay? Groups of people that you cannot discriminate against. And so those aren't a big deal, but you have to include all the wording in that section compared to what the wording had been. So again, you're going to say, shall it be changed to this? Vote yes or no. But you got to give in the preamble what it was so that there's a comparative point.
and that has to be on the ballot.
That has to be on the ballot. And that's why these ballots get really long, really fast. What you ultimately, in some ways, the simplest way to do it is prepare an entire document and say, here it is. But they're not changing substantively or recommending a change that changes the form of government. So if you were going from a city manager form of government to a council mayor form of government, that's the sort of thing that you would do a full charter change on, right? But these things are again important and critical, but they're going to be piece by piece, I think. Now, again, ultimately, once you all decide where you're going to go, I'm going to have a meeting with the Board of Election Commissioners and with the lawyer, and say, okay, here's what the thought is. What do you all think is the best way to put this forward? Because why reinvent the wheel, right? And so we'll figure out what they want to do in that regard. But I think it's going to be comparative point to comparative point.
Okay, and then, so most of them have a yes or no, like.
Where,
should we
where
change-
everything's going to have a yes or no. So it's going to have to be written in such a way that a voter can understand that the question requires a yes or a no.
I know I am at the ballot with judges.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden there's 15 judges that need, and
Yeah, just vote no.
yeah, just vote. Or something, I didn't check that one out.
That's not on the record, is it, Eric?
Yeah.
Fully recorded.
Yeah. But, there are things on here that's important enough for people to have the substance of understanding, so they do go to the poll. So, and I guess that will be our community engagement to make sure they understand what we're changing and why. So when they get to the poll, they don't have to, they know exactly how they're going to vote.
They just don't vote no,
Yeah.
Right, right,
They don't feel
like the judges.
right. That's default.
So Neil, I don't know if I'm taking you too literally, but I remember hearing you say that we could do a council vote to make changes.
Well,
Or-
to what changes will go to the voters.
Okay,
So the council can't vote to change the charter.
okay.
The council can vote independently of CRAB or in conjunction with CRAB to adopt their changes, okay? But you can decide what you want to present to the voters to change the charter, but you as a council cannot change the charter.
Understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The only other question would be, and this is just on the ballot, is there a way to say these items are bringing us into compliance with state law, for example? Is there a header? Is there a preamble for the whole set?
Sometimes you
That
can
we
give that
are-
explanation. That's part of the conversation I'd have with the Board of Election Commissioners to
Okay.
see how much of that we can put in there. Because they set an arbitrary word limit sometimes, which we violate all the time, and they have to bend on it, but they're like, well, this is too long. Well, I'm sorry, but again, we want to inform the voters as to what they're doing. And so Katie will tell you that these are battles that we fight with some constancy.
Yes. And so then other than that, I mean, it does make sense to break up the ballot and the dates by categorizing them in digestible chunks. I think
Probably.
that's what I'm,
And
Yeah.
again, I would tell you that it would be extremely difficult to present all of these things in one ballot. It would be an
Right.
immense ballot.
and if they're even in sections that relate to each other, that would make sense.
Yes, and that's what the mayor's proposed in terms of this. Again, sort of taking some things with top priority and some of the easier things, simpler things, but that do make substantive changes.
Mayor, so your timeline that you submitted, so you're recommending that we look at maybe these items to go on the ballot in April?
Depending on what we decide on those individual items. And I think part of the answer is going to be once Neil gets to sit down and really talk, because right now we're talking about, if you went through this, at least 10 items. And that's a lot of items in my mind,
Right.
given the yes or no. So I think that's going to have to be our decision as well. I think these are grouped in this way because, for example, the November 7th one really is, that's all about compliance. We may decide that we don't want to set, that that's too many for a ballot. And then I think we rely on the prioritization that we have and that the Charter Review Advisory Board has to decide which ones we send forward. So you notice the schedule allows for discussion and votes and consideration of which goes on the ballot. So that we're really thoughtful about how many we put on, what our tolerance for voters' attention is, and what we think we can do in terms of communicating, as you said, why we're making the changes or why we're suggesting the changes we're suggesting.
And also consider the number of other things that you're going to have on that April ballot.
Right.
Are these discussions posted as a public hearing? Are they just regular?
Well, those are all part of the things that you'll talk about
Okay.
in terms of public engagement and how you want to do that. One of the things that the CRAB did for you, though, is did engage in that community or that public engagement. They did solicit and get responses from a number of individuals. And so I think you have, and they are the public, right? So when you appointed these CRAB members at the very beginning, you did that because they were the public voice. So again, I mean, they're your base for your public comment is right there.
So,
And I-
but I'm being literal.
Yeah,
in
I
that,
think
Our
yeah.
council meetings will be public hearings to talk about.
Not public hearings as the legally defined
Okay,
public
that's
hearing, but my intention was that we would by number reference in the charter, list what we plan to talk about on that day on our agenda. So anybody who wanted to know, well, maybe they don't care about audits or replacing some words like poorhouses and insane asylums. They'll know exactly
Yeah.
what it is we intend to talk about within the report. It's also good for their charter review advisory board members because some of them have particular interests in particular items and they may want to be here on those days.
That makes sense, instead of just like charter review items.
Exactly.
More
Yeah.
specific.
Can I ask one question? Just in terms of, I think the rationale for how you've organized all this makes a lot of sense. My one question is that the highest priority item is the last one on the list. In terms of the agreement of the board, I feel like it's the one that's maybe most uncomfortable for council to talk about, but it feels like it's worthy of calling out that we're pushing that off potentially to the end of the list, the compensation discussion. And it's, I understand why we're doing that. I know there's quite a bit of humility on this council. But I also appreciate and agree with the rationale of why that needs to be considered and maybe sooner is better than later.
But we have the opportunity to bring it up if we want to, correct?
Yeah, and by the way, the to be determined ones aren't in particular
Okay.
order necessarily. They're just, those are the, and I'll give you my rationale for putting it there because of the nature of that being in many ways potentially the most controversial, given the feedback that the Charter Review Advisory Board got from the public. It makes sense to me to let that be a topic of conversation through the course of the election season, and then maybe, go right ahead to do that on a ballot soon thereafter, depending on what people feel like.
And I had that same question and contrasted with the hybrid system. Like that was a split vote, like not a clear thing. Do we
Hard-
want, and
hard
that's
to
gonna
do.
take more, I mean, I know it's up here, but would not, probably still not be on the April ballot because it's gonna take.
No, there's
so
no way it
much
can be on the
homework.
yeah. And the
So is that
rationale
just
for.
to get it started.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's the rationale, is that if it's gonna, that, in my mind, we were talking about 6 months at the fastest to another, maybe probably 9 months. When you think about all the permutations that you have to go through from how you're gonna draw the districts, who's gonna do it?
Yeah.
What's the transition plan from this look like to the next one? What does hybrid actually mean in terms of the number of at-large versus ward?
And so would we take like a vote when we discuss it to say like, do we want to go forward with this or do we want to?
Yes, that's the intention,
Yeah.
is to just decide whether to appoint some people to go forward or not.
Okay.
And I would argue that if we're going to appoint some people to go forward and really dig in, then we have to be very serious about sending it to the ballot. I'd hate to see another group of people work for another 9 months and then have the council say,
For sure.
we've changed our mind, we're not sending it forward.
And you'd have to come up with a very concrete plan to do that. And
It
then,
has to be a yes, no.
in order for it to be a yes, no. And then, once you've done that, then we would take that to the county and say, okay, if this passes, how do we implement? But again, as the mayor said, if you went from, if you decided to do, just for the sake of argument, 2 wards that you split east and west, and then everybody else was going to be at large. Who's from a ward? Who's at large? Whose seats don't go? Whose seats do? And how do you ultimately transition into that process? Because it will be a transition. And so again, it may take, once it's approved, it may take a couple of years to actually get it in place.
Right.
So.
And then my other question is just like logistics. What ballots would we, like, which elections can we put things on? Cause like, I'm sure we don't want to have extra cost if we don't need extra costs and.
Right. Well, ultimately, if you have nothing else on the ballot and you put it on the ballot, it's an additional cost, right? So but the flip side of it is, there's a lot of wisdom in having these elections at a time when you're not electing council members. Separate them from the general politics of the city itself. Again, those will be decisions that you all have to make in terms of where you're going to go and ultimately what you're going to do. But you're hitting the nail on the head by these are the questions that you as a council are going to have to decide.
But that's not a today decision.
It's not a today decision. Katie has already talked to the Board of Elections and got us cost estimates for 2024.
Okay.
So when we're talking about what consideration of what items go on which ballots, we'll have that data in front of us and that can inform our decision as well.
And is it April, August, November?
Correct.
All of those
Yeah.
are
We wouldn't
available.
have like a random July election or something.
No,
like that.
no, they're statutory, they're set by statute
Okay.
and you have to meet those days. There are special elections that can occur, but this won't fall into the category of the
Okay, so
special.
we have up to, depending on what we want to pay, up to 3 elections a year.
Yes.
to
Correct.
play with.
Yes. All right.
So what happens to the advisory board while we're doing this?
That's a good question. Yeah, as they wave goodbye to us. So let's.
We locked them in the Gordon.
Yeah.
contract.
Bring them lots of.
They, I think understand that they're a little bit on standby right now, that they have not been fully dissolved because we may need their expertise. And there may be a case where you all want to know exactly why some decision was made. And even though Dr. Peoples and I can try and, provide some information, it may be better to have one of them come back and explain that process. So they are, I think, cautiously optimistic that their work is mostly, if not fully done, but know that there is going to be potentially a little bit more work to do.
Mayor, if I can.
Please.
Along those lines, several of the CRAB members, they put considerable hours, as we've already discussed, on some of the special topics, compensation, wards. So should council choose to form some subcommittees, some of the things that were discussed is would CRAB members also assist with the subcommittee?
Okay.
All right. So are we okay proceeding this way with the complete understanding that this is not anything that's chiseled in stone? It can be adapted as needed. And if, someone wants to really move compensation into a different point in the agenda, please feel free to bring that up. We can certainly consider that. Our last item for the Charter Review Advisory Board discussion is about public engagement. And so you all have in front of you, I believe, a document that Jenny put together about different options that we have for engagement. Considering the schedule we've put together, it gives us a little bit more leeway because most of those are more technical kinds of issues. But we do need to figure out how we want to explain some of those things to the public. And so, Karen, do you want to share with me?
Yeah.
So I guess what Dr. Peoples would like, and I think Jenny is listening at home, would like to know is what of this list would we really like to see have happen? Certainly within the next several months as we begin to get underway. And so everything really, we have some digital engagement, educational kinds of things, some advertising and free media options. Are there particular things that you feel strongly about we use? And you all got this, I think, last meeting as well.
Well, where do we typically get the better results? I mean, is there one mechanism that typically works better than the others?
I think that's a fair question. Thank you, Councilwoman. I think it's really going to decide on the topic that you all decide that you're moving forward with. I think the charter review members could share with you from the open house and other comments. There were some of the items that just didn't garner much community interest. Some of them garnered a lot. So I think it would depend on that. The other item that I would share is whatever you all decide to move forward in April, there are going to be some competing interests because we'll also be doing community engagement for Destination WG. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, there may be opportunities to double up, but we also know that people are inclined to read items in short spurts, go to different open houses on a limited basis. So I'd ask that you all consider that as well.
I mean, I like the variety of things. I don't think on the in-person engagement that we'll really be ready for anything for that first set of dates if we're not talking about things in detail until November 7th. I don't know that we'll
Wondered
be
about
ready
that
for
too.
engagement on the 6th or the 9th.
Unless it's just to get some preliminary kind of feedback on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what we're taking. If we're presenting an open forum on the report in general, then we could do it.
would it be better that we decide which items we're gonna move forward first?
Yeah, I think that's maybe the question is like, it's the chicken and egg, right? Because it's like, do you want to get the public involved in what items we move forward?
No, I'm looking at,
Well,
I guess this is Jenny's timeline, develop questions and 26 recommendations. Well, we probably won't do
So-
26 recommendations.
Well, and I also think we have the same issue of overloading the public with trying to consider all of this at once.
Right.
So, part of this, if you look at, for example, what is on the proposed schedule for the 7th and the 21st, everything on the 7th is, I would say, things that I'm not sure we need much public engagement to tell us that we need to comply with state and federal law. I mean, we just need to comply. If you look at the 21st, the hybrid system of representation, well, we're going to be talking in the abstract here. Do we want public engagement on that before we have a specific plan? Maybe we do, just about the general idea. And that's really up to you all. The other one on there is residency for the municipal judge, and certainly we may want some public input on that. So it may be that we want, to do some video vignettes on each of these topics that we send out and ask people to get in contact with council. It may be, that we have educational materials. I think we need to, you're right, it's a chicken and egg, but I don't envision a way in which we can do good public engagement on 26 things or 28 things all at once. It is 28 now, right? Not 26. I don't know why I have 26 in my mind, but it's 28.
the only thing I would say is if we're gonna have a larger community-wide forum that we build in time to do direct mail, so I think people do respond to that invitation, and that is kind of a long timeline, 3 to 4 weeks to get that ready and in people's mailboxes, so that puts me at the later date. for the in-person
Okay, so,
engagement.
we do, so what we're saying right now is that we do want to probably the 27th through the 30th schedule some sort of in-person engagement. On what topics then becomes the next question, or do we want to wait a little while? Because obviously the postcard or whatever we send is going to have to let people know what we're going to talk
I'm
about.
just saying, if we do an open forum, it's not 6, 8, 9, it's more later.
Gotcha.
And just me glancing at this, the preamble, I believe is important.
Mhm.
That should be number one. But then you look at the items that are gonna bring us in compliance with state law, they're important too. So is that enough? And I think that's what we have to come back and say, these items need to be on the ballot for April 4th. The representation for the hybrid system, or depending on how much verbiage that the ballot need to have to describe that, if that's yes or no, but it's going to take anywhere from 8 to 10 months of planning. to
Exactly.
Get that done. So, I think everything above November 21st needs to be reviewed and say, this is what we're going to put on the April ballot. That's what I mean. I'm not trying to tell you guys that that's what it is, but we need to come to that conclusion quickly so that the public engagement can be focused around what we want to present.
So may I reframe that a little bit?
Mhm.
I think we need to talk about it in terms of considering what we're sending to the April ballot rather than, because until we vote on until we do the work and talk about each of these items and vote on it, we're not really sending anything.
All right.
So I want to be careful that we're not talking about having done something we haven't done yet. But I think what you're saying is that define those as our parameters for public engagement for this fall.
Right. Because I'm just saying, looking at the public engagement calendar, we just all of a sudden, we want to make sure we give Jenny plenty of time to put that Survey Monkey video, the printed material that we're going to mail out, or however we're going to do it, plenty of time. That's my issue.
So I guess I kind of envision is almost what we've been given is a breakdown of the work that they've come up with. But then when we talk about public and so that because I'm pretty sure this is going to be on the website too, right?
Yes.
Okay, so reference that to them, but then point out the areas that we are gonna focus on first. So that people, again, like you said, know that they're taking bits and pieces and not being expected to look at this whole thing. Now, you're gonna have some people that will.
Oh, of course.
Because it's there, but what I was envisioning was that when we have the engagement on the 27th and 30th, then we can let people know that of the information you've been given, this is what we intend to
Those are the
focus on
topics.
then.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, council members, I would encourage you to ignore that time frame for launch column. In many ways, those were artificial dates as city staff were planning our work and moving into it. And that was also before the discussion, probably should have just taken that column out of what perhaps the council recommendations may be. So once you all figure out perhaps what you want to move forward with on the April ballot, we can come back to you with a revised timeframe.
Okay.
And I'm also cognizant that holidays are coming up. So perhaps November 27th through 30th, didn't work for this group. We'll work with that and tailor the calendar. There's a lot in here.
And let me just also thank you very much, by the way, Dr. Peoples, but let me also say the way this is structured. So let's say on the 7th, we talk about audits, 5.6. My vision is we don't take a vote on that until that December, January meeting, so that we have time to get that public information back to us if people have questions or concerns about things. Right. So just because we're going to talk about something the 7th doesn't mean we have to vote whether to send it to the ballot or not, because then we'd be ahead of our public engagement and that really would defeat the purpose of having it.
I just ask that we be clear about that, right? That we know kind of going in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like where we're voting and where we're just discussing, like because sometimes that trips us up a little bit. So it's hard, if we don't know ahead of time.
And also like to be clear on what the public engagement is for, is it like to help us decide what we want to vote on, like what we as individuals want to support, or is it like we've already decided as a council what we're going to do and now we're educating about what those changes would be, or is it both at different times?
Staff will need that direction. Because that is a
Yeah.
different type of public engagement. One
Yeah.
is educating
Right.
voters on what the ballot issue is, and the other is getting their input.
Because
for
CROB has
council.
already gotten their input too.
Correct.
So I'm struggling with that too, because they've already had the public engagement and done this. And so I guess it's like, what are we taking new back to that? Maybe the new thing is like, these are the final decisions that CROB decided to move forward and give them another pass at it.
I think that's a fair point. I think in my mind, it's simply another pass at it. They received I think a significant amount of public engagement, and I have the benefit of sitting in the meeting when they reviewed it all and understand a little bit about where it's coming from. I think there's some people who haven't been paying attention to this point, and now they'll have an opportunity to give us some thoughts as well. And then, education comes after we've decided what goes on the ballot.
So maybe you can change the column and say like purpose. And then it helps define, it's right there.
And that's what I was
Okay.
focused on,
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
time frame that they put on here, so.
Right. So I'm just so we're not too long on this issue. One of the things I think that Dr. Peoples and Ms. Starkey wanted from us is this is like a laundry list. We don't expect people to do, excuse me, all of it. Are there particular things that jump out at you that you really think are important that happens? Are we going to defer to the best judgment of our staff about which of these things might be most effective? That's really, I think, part of our decision right now as well.
I mean, I absolutely defer to staff. Like, I feel like especially the experience we've had over the last couple of years of different kinds of engagement and which types of topics matter in which forums or, in which types of communication. I think we have an excellent perspective from staff on that. So I don't feel like I need to pick off the list, I guess. I would prefer.
I think
to
it's
me, it depends on-
it's a great list, but staff can.
I was gonna say, it depends on what the subject matter is, the types of engagement, to me.
Okay.
Which staff can decide.
Okay.
What, if we just pick
All
the
right.
topics, let staff figure out the best way to,
Let's do it.
Yeah.
yes.
So what I'm hearing, Madam Mayor and council members, is that you all will make those decisions about what is going forth on the April ballot or start having those discussions, we will come back with you and I will give some recommendations on what the aligning, public engagement is with those. And I would ask that you all prepare yourselves to be volunteers. If we are doing some vignettes, we need faces, giving the education and information, that sort of thing.
So Mayor, it looks like on November the 7th, we're going to have communication or discussions about items.
Correct.
What is it that you want us to be prepared for?
Good question. So you will get, with our agenda next time, you will get the charter reference point, so 2.12. If you open your report that you received to page 5, you will see that section, I can't remember which I used as an example, 2.12. You can find all the information about that on page 15.
Okay.
Right? So you come prepared with questions about that proposal. You can state your preference about whether you think it should go to the ballot or not at that time. We're just not voting. I think some of these, this first time, are going to be easy because it really is compliance.
Right.
But I do think we owe it to our residents to actually go through each one individually.
Okay. And how many are we going to have on the agenda each meeting?
It depends on what they are. So that meeting right now has about 8 of them on there because I think they're relatively simple. The following meeting will be just 2 things: the residency of the municipal judge and the hybrid system.
Okay.
And then the preamble is the only thing for that, in addition to anything that in the next week, anyone on the council might like to bring forward for consideration for the April ballot.
So December the 19th, I mean, we should be done.
December the 19th, we should have had a preliminary discussion of everything that is right now, the way the schedule is laid out, ready to go forward. That doesn't mean we won't have a fair amount of time. That's a lot of votes to take when you got to read each one of them. Because Neil, what form does our recommendation to take it to the ballot take? Is that a resolution? Is that
It's a resolution, and that we would then prepare the language that then goes to St. Louis County. So again,
and I assume that each one of them is a separate resolution.
yes.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of voting to do and reading.
Yeah.
Make Neil earn his money.
Make our hourly rate go down.
Right. And so that's the other thing is the idea is to chop this up so that we're not here for ever and ever and ever.
Right.
Amen.
And my next question is this done in a meeting or work session?
It's done in the regular meeting
Okay.
because we will be eventually working our way to resolutions.
Okay. I just want to make sure we didn't stuff ourselves in 1 hour at the work session trying to talk.
No.
Yeah.
We got other things to talk about at the work
I
session,
know.
like parking and naming things.
Yeah.
It's true.
All right. Is there anything else that anyone wants to talk about in terms of the Charter Review Advisory Board and their report? Other than once more to say how fantastic
Yeah,
they
I'm
are.
thankful we have it.
Yeah.
As we
All right.
enter this phase, I'm thankful we have all this documentation.
All right. Thank you all once again. So we will now move on to the approval of the consent agenda. And Councilmember Smith, could you call for that, please?
Mayor, call for the approval of the consent agenda.
I guess I forgot to see if anyone wants to take the minutes out, but I think we're safe.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
All right. We have made some appointments to boards and commissions. Robert Wagner has been appointed as an alternate member to the Traffic Advisory Commission. Barb Strang and John Sauter have been appointed to the Police Community Engagement Board. And Laura Jordan has been reappointed to the Green Space Advisory Commission. And Councilmember Bliss, I think this is usually your gig to call for our closed session, please. I know we have 1 and 4.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for an executive closed section related to attorney-client privilege communications, Missouri statute 610.021, open parens 1, close parens, and negotiated contract, Missouri statute 610.021, open parens 1, 2, close parens.
Neil, do we need to do the audit one? I think that's 17 for the, present the information from the auditor.
We do need to, yes.
We do. That's a closed session matter too. Yeah, the
Right.
auditor's comments.
I believe it's like section 17.
17 maybe? Hold
I
on.
think it's some,
You both said 17, so
It's
I'm gonna,
17.
I'm
I
gonna
think it's
trust
17.
your judgment.
okay.
It is 17, but we'll correct it if it's not. There's a section in 610.021 that specifically says comments by the auditor to the board are closed. So
Okay,
I'm amending
believe
your
to be
motion to
upon
add
information
17.
and belief subsection 17.
17, okay. I would like to amend that we will be adding subsection, open parens 17, close parens.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Right. We're all official. Does anyone need a very quick break before we start our closed session as we change over?